you're ready to wake up, you're going to wake up. And if you're not ready, you're going to stay pretending that you're just a little, poor little me.
Do you feel it?
Yes, we do.
A worldwide awakening is upon us. Welcome to the Universal Consciousness Show.
The Universal Consciousness Show,
where we explore topics such as UFOs, aliens, banned medical cures, as well as classified secret knowledge. Come question your holographic existence. Share experiences from the other side. This is a show that will expand your mind as we decrypt the symbolic messages locked away deep within your DNA. And now, your guides for this magical journey. The hosts of the Universal Consciousness Show, Augie Nost and Diana Seraphim.
Hello, everybody. You are listening to the show for the thinking global citizen. My name is Augie, and I'm one of the hosts, and I have my co-host Diana over in Germany. Are you there, Diana?
I'm here. Hello, everyone.
Hi there. Yeah, before I introduce our guest today, I want to tell you how you can connect with us also. You can visit us at our website, www.universal-consciousness-show.com. And also we are on YouTube with the same name, Universal Consciousness Show. And please subscribe while you're there. That's going to help us a lot. And when you do push that red subscribe button, there is a little black bell that comes up next to it. And you know what it works like. So click on that bell, because then you'll get notifications on the new shows coming out. And for those of you that like to hear this show again, just go to the universal-consciousness-show.com website or on YouTube. And of course, we are also always on KCOR Radio's archive. And that is at kcorradio.com under Universal Consciousness Show. And you'll find us there in the archives. And we are on Twitter, iTunes, TuneIn, Alexa, Facebook, and a few other places that you can find us out there. And if you are listening at the KCOR Radio website, there is this wonderful little feature down at the bottom there. Unless they changed it now and they got the new website up, you'll find it on there somewhere. There is a donate button. And if you like what you hear, please also show us your gratitude and tell us that way also. It will help us to tell us we are doing the right thing. And of course, if you can't, that is perfectly all right. We love you. We are glad you are here listening. And there is, well, let's see. Let me get to the guest, because we have something really special for you today. He is a world traveler, and he had a phenomenal life experience. And because of that, and what he has learned later, he has become a spiritual teacher, a healer, a mystic, priest, a psychic with some phenomenal predictions that usually comes through. He's a channel. He's an intuitive clairvoyant. And here's a term that I haven't heard before. It's a timeline healer. And oh gosh, I want to hear about that one. And he has also written 7 books. And he's a musician, a recording artist, and the co-founder of Sananda Mystery School. I'm going to say that again. He's the co-founder of Sananda Mystery School. And folks, you should look into that, because there is some phenomenal information to be had there. And whether you like it or not, or know it or not, you need to hear that. I also said that he has written 7 books, and his last one is The Secrets of Unlimited Energy. And he has also written The Mystery of Time and The Real History of Earth and Earth Awakens to Prophecy 2017 to 2030. Now, that could be interesting for you to read. And he's written several others, and he'll tell us about that. You will find him and everything he does at his website at salrachele.com. And since it's not a really common American name, I'm going to spell it for you. That's Let's do that again. salrachele.com. Oh, this is going to be good. And Diana's been a long time fan of this gentleman, and I'm a more recent one, and I'm getting more impressed the more I read. So welcome to the show, Sal.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
Hello, Sal. Thank you so much for being here with us today and sharing with us your precious information. I don't want to spend too much time on me, so I just jump to the first question. Before we begin the whole discussion, could you please tell us in a squeezed story, how did it all begin for you, or what was the turning point in your life that put you on this wonderful spiritual path?
Well, some people have near-death experiences or major crises in their life that lead them to begin their path of spiritual awakening. But in my case, I didn't really have that. I've always been interested since very young age in the paranormal, psychic phenomena, things of that nature. And when I was living in the Silicon Valley of California in the mid-1970s, I started once again breaking away from my job in the computer industry and starting to do some psychic research. And I met some psychics. But what really started it for me was the Silva method, which at the time was called Silva Mind Control. That's not a very politically correct name these days, so it's now called the Silva method. But it was about controlling your own mind. And in part of the program, they have a section where you learn how to function psychically and intuitively. Well, I went to a graduate of the Silva method who proceeded to tell me things that were absolutely impossible to know unless she was reading me psychically. So I knew at that point, this is real. I'm going to learn how to do this myself. And I took the Silva method. And the teacher that I had was an extraordinary individual who taught way more than the basic lecture series. And so I took it several times in a row from him. And he was teaching about Tantra and enlightenment and Eastern forms of meditation and yoga and things like that, as well as how to control your mind, how to function at an alpha theta brainwave level. So that really got me started, and I started tuning in to enlightened teachers around the world and connecting with them psychically using the methods in Silva, including mental projection. And I started downloading, would be the phrase we would use today, downloading knowledge and wisdom from all of these teachers that I was tuning into. And that really put me on the fast track. I got involved in the science of rebirthing, and which is a form of conscious breathing yoga, and got involved in many other programs, various self-improvement workshops and seminars. And I was a bit of a seminar junkie in the late 70s and early 80s. And things evolved. By the 90s, I was involved in sacred theater for a while, and I started channeling. In 1989, my personal spirit guide Leah came to me and reminded me of who she was, my twin soul in the higher dimensions. And I started working with her more or less privately. I was reluctant to go public with channeling because I wasn't too happy with most of the channelings that I was reading. They didn't seem very accurate, a lot of them. A lot of them were colored by personal fears and prejudices. And so I was kind of almost anti-channeling at that point. And then around 2002, I decided I was ready to start putting my channeled material out in a more public way. And other beings came to me, including a group called the Arcturians. Lord Sananda, the Oversoul of Jesus, began coming to me, and a group called the Founders, which are what some people call creator gods. And I later added Isis and Thoth and a few others. But I've pretty much kept the same group of spirit guides for about the last 15 years or so. So that's kind of a real abbreviated version of my story. I haven't gone into the last 15 years, but maybe we'll cover that later.
Yeah, I
So
know
actually this whole this whole powerful information that you are sharing in your books, is it coming from this the so-called the founders? Who are these entities actually, and why did they choose you?
Well, the Founders are a group of non-physical entities. They're from what I call level 12, which is a very high level of consciousness. And they're groups of souls. They appear to me like bright blue-white stars. They have a lot of knowledge of physics and science. And I was brought up in a scientific environment. And so that's one of the reasons why they chose to work with me, because I have not only a pretty strong command of the English language, but I also have a scientific approach to life. True science is about finding out how the universe works. It's not about getting bought and paid for by some major corporation and then getting shut down if your technology is too advanced or would put the oil companies out of business or things like that. True science says, I don't know, but I want to find out, and I'm not going to be bought and paid for by the traditional scientific establishment. So with that approach, I think the Founders found me to be one of maybe a couple dozen channels worldwide that are appropriate for their messages.
Yeah, that gets interesting once you start getting information like that, because you mentioned a download, and those once you get connected, these downloads can come all the time or very often, can't they?
Well, yes, and in fact, it's part of my being, you could say. You could almost say, if you wanted to, you could say that all of the beings I channel are connected to my higher self, very, very direct connection there. So they're always kind of with me. I don't have to dial them up on a phone number, a cosmic phone number, in order to get them. They're almost always available, especially the higher ones are always available.
Yeah. And let's in your information you talk about time, and let's talk a little bit about timelines, and healing a timeline. I'm interested in time because I've had some strange experiences within time, both past and future. So how do you presume to heal maybe a timeline? That could be healing the past or the future. How can we heal the past? Maybe talk a little bit about this.
Yes, well, the best way to understand time, because the book is called A Mystery of Time, and because time is pretty much a mystery. There are two kinds of time. There is linear time and nonlinear time, or what could be called local time and non-local time, using the quantum physics terminology. And the idea of local time is pretty well understood. That's time on the clock and the calendar, measuring how many times the Earth revolves around the sun, or how many times it rotates on its axis, how many cycles of moon there are. Those are the three basic measurements of linear or local time. Everybody pretty much understands that. Non-local time, however, is a whole different thing. This is the idea that all time exists in this eternal now moment. That means the past is happening right now, and the future is happening right now, as well as the present. Not only that, but there are what we call possible and probable realities. We have what's called the dominant timeline or the linear timeline, which is a recorded history of the past and what will play out as recorded history in the future. And then we have what many people call parallel realities. I don't use that term too much, but these are other dimensions of time. Just as there are dimensions of space, there are dimensions of time. And this explains some of the exotic phenomena that we're hearing about these days, like the Mandela effect and a few others. Deja vu is another one, which is an intersecting of different possible and probable timelines. You could say there's a timeline where JFK never got assassinated. There's a timeline where Hillary Clinton was elected president. There's a timeline when Martin Luther King was never assassinated. You know, on and on. You could go. These are all timelines that really exist. They're not the dominant timeline. They're not recorded as having had that happen in history. But nevertheless, these are alternate timelines that are happening at the same time as our dominant timeline. So the question immediately comes to mind, well, how do you decide what's going to be in the dominant timeline? And basically, there's a concept called activation. Many of you have heard of activation. Maybe you've even heard of ascension activation meditations. I have some of those on my website. Mm-hmm. The word activation basically means giving time, energy, attention, and focus to something. In other words, infusing something with your consciousness. Now, we are powerful creators. So our consciousness determines our experience of reality. I like that a lot better than the old metaphysical idea that your thoughts create your reality. That's partially true, but it's not a very good description of how metaphysics works. Your consciousness determines your experience of reality. That is an accurate statement, and that's the one that is involved with activation. If we want, for example, to create a world of peace, let's say we want world peace, we have to activate the timeline of world peace. That means we have to put a lot of time, energy, focus, and attention on world peace. And because we're all powerful creators, and there's about 7.8 billion of us on Earth, not counting the other life forms, just the human beings, our powerful thoughts are all interacting with each other. And what we see in the dominant timeline is the outpicturing of our dominant thoughts, of the thoughts that are being activated. So this is there's several examples I could use of this. For example, in the very next moment, I could pick up a glass of water, or I could move my computer around, or adjust my volume, or stand up, or sit down, or walk away. There's literally an infinite number of possible actions I could take. So what are the actual actions that occur? They're the ones I put the most time, energy, attention, and focus into. So I could activate taking a drink, for example, and then actually direct my hand to pick up the container and take a drink. So that's a silly example, but it pretty much drives the point of activating timelines.
I got a quick question in relation to that. When it talks about the future, we can create our future. But is there still a future there if we have not thought of it? Let's say that we create something in our mind with vivid pictures and emotion and all the good stuff that goes into the spiritual language, and we place that in the future. Now we got something created that we can draw ourselves up that timeline too. But what about if we never created anything in the future? We just live in the present. Can we then also, is there a specific place in the future that we would go without having created it first? I'm not so sure I explained that right, but...
Well, I think you did. It does have a rather intricate, complicated answer, because we're looking at two things. We're looking at individual consciousness and we're looking at collective consciousness. So let's say, for example, that I want to create a future where there are no taxes. Now,
hey, I'm with you. I'm with you right now.
So I might be able to successfully create a situation in my own life where I'm not paying any taxes. But if there's a very strong belief in taxes in the collective timeline, the collective consciousness, then it's unlikely that in any time soon I'm going to actually abolish taxes just because I have chosen to stop believing in taxes. So you can see how it gets kind of complicated here. There may be souls who come to Earth specifically because they want to learn about paying taxes. Now, that may sound kind of silly, but would I be depriving them of their opportunity to learn all about paying taxes if I were able to abolish taxes all by myself? So in other words, I could violate the free will of other souls if I have the power to change the entire reality just because I don't want to pay taxes anymore, and all of a sudden tomorrow everybody wakes up and there's no such thing as taxes. There'd probably be a lot of chaos and a lot of happiness too, probably.
Yeah, mostly happiness, I'm sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we have 4 minutes left for the break, and we got time for just an additional side questions on time here. But can we possibly go into the future and meet ourselves?
Yes, I have a technique that I teach on how to do that. It's called future timeline linking. And in this technique, you actually travel in a time machine into one of your possible or probable futures, and you meet a future version of yourself that's already successful doing what it is that you intend to create. And you establish a link to that self. That self becomes a spirit guide to you, you could say, and gives you advice on how to get to that reality using the linear time of everyday activity. So I've just given a real short definition of future timeline linking, one of the techniques that we learn in the timeline healing trainings.
So if I can establish this link, I will have my future me as a guide for me forever?
Not necessarily forever, because you have free will. You can change which timeline you're traveling. You can jump into a different possible or probable timeline and establish a different future self if you decide partway in your journey to meet the original future self that you don't want that reality after all. You can abandon that timeline. It still exists, but you're no longer activating it. You're now going to activate a different timeline that's more to your liking. And so you create a new future self.
Oh, you have
Sounds
no...
so powerful.
Yeah.
Wow.
You have no idea how I love hearing that, because I have been talking about this for years, that you can actually do this through a form of time travel. And now I don't sound so crazy anymore. This is wonderful.
Oh, at least you don't sound crazy to me. Maybe there's still a few people out there that are think we're wearing our tinfoil hats.
Yeah. Well, that's all right. I see we have a minute left before the break, and when we come back, we are going to get into a little more of what's behind the veil. And Diana has a number of questions here that will almost blow you out of the saddle. So let's just go to the break, and we'll be right back with Sal Rachele.
You're listening to the Universal Consciousness Show.
The Universal Consciousness Show.
Your weekly connection to the truth.
You get to really sort of enjoy a bizarre ride.
Share your knowledge by calling our hotline number at 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230.
Call now.
Worldwide callers find us on Skype at KCOR Radio. It's time to abandon your fear and question what you think you know.
And now, if you will, accompany me on a journey to the future.
More awakening awaits.
After this, after this, after this, after this, after this, after this.
The Fenton Files, where it's all connected.
You see, whoever controls technology controls the world.
Come explore a universe full of possibilities. Every Monday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. The Fenton Files. Go where no other show has gone before.
You can deny all the things I've seen, all the things I've discovered, but not for much longer. Because too many others know what's happening out there.
Whether it be UFOs, aliens, conspiracies, or even consciousness, your host, Lorian Fenton, has a file for that. The Fenton Files. Your journey to the truth is but a file away. Live, Monday nights, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The Fenton Files.
Incredibly intense.
Where truth is just waiting to be discovered.
Monday nights are about to become hauntingly good, as Reverend Sean Whittington possesses the airwaves with Vegas Supernatural. Tune in every Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern for Vegas Supernatural, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. There's a war raging between good and evil. The question is, which side are you fighting on? Tune in Monday nights as Reverend Sean Whittington sets the new standard for paranormal radio with some of the most influential personalities in the world today. Vegas Supernatural, hosted by Reverend Sean Whittington, every Monday night at 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. The one show even the devil doesn't want you to hear.
Are you ready to go?
It's showtime!
Here we go, world. You're listening to the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Broadcasting from the heart of Las Vegas, Nevada.
Your base is so large it has to draw most of its power from the nearby nuclear fusion plant.
The future of radio is here and now.
Here's what happened on the last episode of Three Guys, No Time.
Hey, this is Dave Dalton. Be sure and join Dave Garrity and I the 25th over at the Royal Resort Hotel, 99 Convention Center Drive-In. We will be at Dr. A's Magic Medicine Show. We'll let him tell you all about it.
Hi, folks. My name is Michael Aslan, and I do the Dr. A Mystical, Magical, Medicinal Elixir for Anything That Ails You Medicine Show, also known as Dr. A's Magic Medicine Show, at the Royal Resort every week, 99 Convention Center Drive. Folks, come on out and have a good time with me as I tell you all about my special elixir that's guaranteed to help you to see, get rid of your dog's fleas, take away your fat, and get rid of your rats. It is a miracle in the bottle, and that bottle is totally recyclable, making us a completely green company. So come on out Tuesday nights, 8 o'clock, Royal Resort Hotel, Majestic Theater, and have a little bit of fun with me with a lot of comedy, magic, and audience participation.
Don't forget to join Three Guys, No Ties at the Royal Resort Hotel, 99 Convention Center Drive, this Tuesday night, the 25th, 8 p.m. show. Mention Three Guys, No Ties or the KCOR Digital Radio Network, and you get in for free.
Three Guys, No Ties. Wednesday nights, 7 to 9 Pacific on the KCOR Digital Radio Network.
Going live in 3, 2, 1.
It's time, once again, to unravel the mysteries of the universe by connecting the dots to a higher consciousness. This is the Universal Consciousness Show.
The Universal Consciousness Show.
Now the world will begin hearing us.
Share your knowledge by calling 702-425-9230. That's 702-425-9230. Worldwide callers use Skype name KCOR Radio.
It's as simple as that.
Find us on Twitter at KCOR Radio or use hashtag KCOR. Even better, join us on the live chat at KCORradio.com. Back to your enlightened hosts, Agi Nost and Diana Serafin.
Hello. You are listening to the Universal Consciousness Show, and we have Sal Rachele with us. And we are unveiling the mysteries of the universe one by one here. And we were talking before the break about time. And now we are going to go even deeper. Diana, you put together a bunch of questions, and the one question that I would love to hear about is your first one.
Oh, yes, I was wondering always when I'm hearing to all the spiritual conferences and stuff like that, and I suppose many people, they are asking this question themselves. What is the difference between the soul and the spirit?
Excellent question. And again, I'm going to preface my answer that I'm going to oversimplify as much as possible because I do get a very distinct understanding at an energetic level of the difference. But we want to put it into words that everybody can understand. So the simplest way to describe it is that the soul is an individualized aspect of spirit. Spirit is the energy of God, you could say. It's the intelligent energy of God. It is the presence of God that is in all things, and it is literally in all things. There is no place in the creation where spirit is absent. Soul is an individualized aspect of spirit, which we call the I am or the higher self. Although higher self, as I define it, is actually more than just soul. In my book, Soul Integration, I go into 12 aspects of self, and level 7 is the soul. We have level 8, which is the oversoul, level 9, which we call the monad, and so on, all the way up to level 12, which we call the universal God presence. So from a technical standpoint, soul is level 7 of our being. However, spirit permeates all 12 levels. So that's one of the ways to describe the difference between soul and spirit. Spirit, of course, is eternal. Soul has an eternal aspect, you might say, an aspect that has always been and will always be. But it's not necessarily conscious of always having been or always being.
But still, you mentioned that the spirit is everywhere, and this is a manifestation of the God. And still, we all live in a permanent denial of our divine nature. So,
well, let's not call it a permanent denial. Let's call it a denial.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because if it were permanent, there'd be no hope for us.
Yeah, that's true.
So basically, time and eternity are also oddities, local and non-local once again. Spirit being eternal. And enlightenment is the waking up to our eternal self, waking up to the realization or the awareness of our eternal self, our spiritual self. And an interesting corollary to our first segment before the break and this segment is that when you're in an enlightened state, it feels as though you have always been enlightened. Maybe you blinked your eyes for a fraction of a second and you were in some other state. When you're in an unenlightened state, you feel as though you've been in an unenlightened state for a very long time, and you have a distant memory of having been in an enlightened state, and maybe there's some far distant future when you're going to be in an enlightened state again. But this whole million years of evolution, or however long it is, all happens in the blink of an eye from the enlightened point of view. It's as though all of time just kind of rolls up into we call it a singularity in physics. The time disappears into a singularity and you emerge as your eternal self, which has always been and will always be. So I just thought I'd throw that out there to give people something to think about.
That is actually a very good point, because outside of the physical, in the lower astral worlds, maybe there still is a little bit of time, but up at the higher vibrations, time does not exist as we know it. So our life, in their understanding, only lasts for a split moment. They have access to see all of it in a split moment.
That comes to the idea that God created the heavens and the earth in 7 days. Of course, that's an allegory, but it could be taken in a literal sense to mean that from a God-conscious perspective, from a very high level of consciousness, a day is an eon. A million years is a day, or a billion years is a day. So as you go to higher levels of consciousness, time tends to speed up, which means that 1 week to a level 7 being might be equivalent to 10 years to a level 4 being. I call that, and this is a complicated term, but are you ready for it? Natural harmonic time compression. Natural harmonic time compression. That's the sense that as you go higher in vibration, time seems to speed up. Now, once you reach a certain level of consciousness, you can go back and forth between time compression and time expansion. Have you ever wondered how Archangel Michael, for example, can come down to earth and give healings to 10,000 people all in a few seconds? Well, because he uses time expansion. He can do full, complete healings on 10,000 people, then return to his level or dimension where only a few seconds have elapsed. So that's the opposite. That's time expansion rather than time contraction. So when you're in a very high level of consciousness, you can do it either way. You can make a million years seem like a few seconds, or you can make a few seconds seem like a million years. And that explains how these beings can be in several places at once, all giving healings at the same time, because they're not bound by linear time.
And then there are physical beings that we have read about, and they've been talked about, especially from India and some in the Middle East, that has been observed in two places at the same time, but they're still physical beings appearing to us.
This is what we call the true avatars. Now, the word avatar is used rather loosely. My technical definition of avatar is a being who has attained a 9th level or higher consciousness. And there aren't very many of them. I could name them on the fingers of one hand. One popular one is Babaji, the avatar that was Yogananda's teacher's teacher's teacher. In the tradition of autobiography of a yogi, he's mentioned in many different places. And there's other manifestations of him. There's a later one called Harikan Baba and several others. And he's a true avatar. He's attained level 9 consciousness, and he's capable of manufacturing multiple bodies at the same time, or teleporting a body from one place to another, or shape-shifting, changing the appearance of the body. I had a visitation from Babaji back in the early 80s. He came to me in the form of an old woman, not super old, but just kind of an older woman. And I'm not going to take the time to tell the whole story, but basically I saw him laughing in my inner vision toward the end of the encounter, and it was a very profound experience. So some of the others would be Lord Krishna, who's also what we call a level 10 being, and then there's Lord Melchizedek, and there's others as well. So
would that be something similar to city consciousness?
Well, the cities are more or less phenomena that tend to transcend time and space, and they're the abilities or powers like Sai Baba, who, in my humble opinion, did not quite reach level of avatar, was able to demonstrate some of the abilities with the Kabudi ash, and the urn and stuff like that. He was maybe just below the level of avatar. So yes, some of them, some of the abilities you can learn when you're in level 4 and 5, like telepathy, telepathic communication, healing at a distance, psychometry, psychokinetics. Some of these abilities you can learn when you're not yet at the avatar level, but that you're limited in how much you can use them until you reach the avatar level.
But you were talking about the collective consciousness of when you was talking about timelines, and I would like to give a quote from you from the Soul Integration. You said, the sooner we wake up to the higher truth of one being, the easier it will be to make the transition from a world of death and destruction to one of enlightenment and beauty. So for me, Sel, that it sounds like it's up to us. So every one of us could make a difference. Do we need a minority report, or how would you explain that?
Well, it's a little bit more complex than that because your level of creative ability depends on your level of consciousness. If you've reached level 6 consciousness, you're a lot more powerful as a creator on Earth than somebody who's at level 3 consciousness, for example. And I even use a logarithmic scale in my later books to describe this. And I say, for example, just to keep the math really simple, let's say that when you reach level 4, you're 10 times more creative and powerful than at level 3. And maybe at level 5, you're 100 times more powerful. And maybe at level 6, you're 1,000 times more powerful. So I'm using a simple logarithmic scale to describe how level of vibration affects your ability to influence the world. Now, immediately we're going to get people saying, well, Hitler certainly didn't have a very high level of consciousness, and neither did Stalin, but they influenced a lot of people around the world. So what's the deal with that? Well, what the deal with that is that you can influence a lot of people, but not necessarily in a positive, uplifting way. You can mind control people to all believe a certain way. But if you have a higher consciousness, of course, you're going to be putting out a vibration of peace and a vibration of unconditional love. And that's going to go out and mix with the collective consciousness in ways that are very powerful if you're at a high level. So if let's say you're at level 4 and you want to see world peace, well, if you come together with 1,000 other level 4s who also want world peace, that's going to make a difference. That might be the equivalent of one level 6 being putting out world peace, for example. And obviously, if you're at level 6 and you have 1,000 level 6s coming together meditating for world peace, that's extremely powerful. That might be the equivalent of 10 million or 100 million level 3s all wanting world peace.
That's powerful because that is the mastermind.
Yes, exactly.
Yep.
But you were talking also about the new golden age of Earth and the shift of ages, which began on 21 of December. Can you elaborate a tiny bit about that? It's tiny bit time left, but still.
Yes, and actually this is a very important point because a lot of people are wondering why things are not happening as quickly as they were originally prophesized to happen. And, some people don't think much happened at all in December 21st of 2012, but I would disagree, and I could point out a lot of examples of what's happened since then. But the point is, prophecy seems to happen more slowly than it originally was prophesized to happen. So why is that? And the reason is because everybody's a powerful creator, even those that are creating negatively. And we have so many people in history and in the world today who believe in the negative status quo, what some people are calling the deep state or the dark cabal or whatever they want to call it. There's a lot of names for it. There's a lot of belief in that. There's a lot of energy being given to the dark ways of doing things, the ways which tend to inhibit spiritual growth. Let's call it that. My definition of negativity is a state of consciousness that tends to inhibit spiritual growth. So there's a lot of people who are in negativity, who are blindly believing what they see on the evening news, for example, or who are polarized. They either hate the president or they love the president. There's nothing in between. So they're polarized. And they're stuck in this polarization. They're fighting against the darkness. They've made the darkness more real by giving it an actual power of their own making and saying, I have to fight against devil or Satan or Lucifer or whoever. And it's all God. But there's an aspect of God that has forgotten that all is one and has therefore created this thing called devil or Satan or whatever. And because we're so powerful, we have made it real. In this dimension, anyway. We've made this like a real force that seems to be opposing God. Well, that's not really true, because at the ultimate level, there's only God. But at this level, if you believe something strongly enough, you'll have an experience of it. So people who believe in the devil are having an experience of the devil in some form or another.
Yeah, and another thing that I remember reading, and that was that Albert Einstein, a very brilliant man in many different ways, both physical and also spiritually in his later days. A year before he died, he made the comment in an interview that I have studied the universe more than most people, and I have found that this whole universe is made from the vibration of love.
Beautiful. I've seen a few of his spiritual comments, but I hadn't seen that one.
Yeah. That is powerful, especially coming from him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what I'm doing right now, because I know we don't have a lot of time, is I'm synthesizing science and spirituality. That's what my latest book, The Secrets of Unlimited Energy. The first third of the book is the science of zero-point energy and how to tap into the unlimited field of energy and things like that. The second part is on spirituality and metaphysics, and the third part is on psychology. So I'm basically tapping into the different fields of study and looking at, what is the secret of unlimited energy? And basically, to sum it up, the universe is not entropic. It is both centropic and entropic. Centropic is the regenerative principle. Mm-hmm. It's just that we're only able to measure the entropic with our scientific instruments, and so we arrogantly assume that everything is just running down and eventually there'll be total chaos. But that's not true. There's every moment the universe oscillates between entropy and centropy, or between entropy and what's been called quantum coherence. You have to study quantum fluctuations in the vacuum of space to really understand how we go back and forth between a creative force and a destructive force. So that's all described in the first third of the book. And then I go on to talk about the non-duality of God, which sounds a little bit like the Vedantic traditions in the East, and how we are living in a non-dual universe, which manifests as polarities. And then we go on into the psychology, which is how are we degenerating and dying and decaying with our consciousness? What are we doing in consciousness which causes us to decay and die, basically? And how can we turn that around so that we can be eternally youthful for as long as we're on this earth? For as long as we desire to be here, we can have an eternally youthful body. Mainstream science is acknowledging that that's possible using stem cells and various other technologies.
Yeah, and the mind has a big thing in that, especially when it comes to the man in China that I found. The government verified his age. He died from an accident at the age of 256. So it does happen.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and there's been numerous souls who have been there. I've met a couple of breatharians, people who live on just air. Mm-hmm. They no longer eat or drink. So we know these things are possible. Most people think, oh, that's for a few yogis living high up in the Himalayas. That's not for me. I've got a wife and kids, and I've got to pay my bills, and blah, blah, blah,
Yeah. Sal, we only got 5 minutes left of the show here, so tell us where they can reach you, about your services, what you can help people do, especially about your readings also, because I'm interested in that, and also your books. Just the floor is yours.
Okay, well, I do 60-minute readings with people. They're usually booked well in advance, which they are right now because I'm getting ready to take off on one of my European tours. But you can get in probably in April or May. There might be an opening somewhere, or maybe June. And they're 1-hour readings, and they combine some psychic and intuitive counseling, spiritual counseling, timeline healing, which is the big thing I'm doing. And that is where you go back and forward in time and give healings to yourselves that exist in various aspects of the timeline. And I do timeline healing trainings. I'm doing all 3 trainings in Serbia in March. And then I'm doing 2 or 3 trainings in Croatia in April. And then I'm doing a couple of trainings in Ukraine and a couple of trainings in Romania. And I also do other seminars. I'm doing seminars based on the new book, The Secrets of Unlimited Energy. The first part is how to tap into unlimited energy. The second part is called The Secrets of Immortality, how to maintain an eternally youthful body for as long as you desire. And those are going to be presented in many countries. I'll be making a brief appearance in the Czech Republic. And later in the year, I'll be in Russia and Bulgaria and a few other places. I'm going to be in Latvia in October and for the first time, so I'm looking forward to Latvia as well. So you can go to my website if you do want to order a book. The books are available at www.salrachele.com. It's actually pronounced Rachele. It's Italian, but most people say Rachele or Rachele. So think Rachele with one L if you want to remember the website. And you can order all of my books. Some of them are available as hard copies. Some are only available as ebooks. More and more, I'm, of course, focusing on ebooks. I think the Soul Integration is available in the Kindle format also. So you can also find out about the Sananda Mystery School, which is right now it's a self-study program where you get lessons sent to you as you can order the lessons a few at a time and have them sent to you. But occasionally we do groups around the world where we study the lessons of Sananda. The main value of mystery schools in this day and age is that it keeps you focused on your spiritual practice. It's a way of disciplining you to do something regularly. That's the main advantage of mystery schools. So I saw a message that we're down to our last minute. So is there anything else you want to...
Well, if you had the chance to talk to the whole world and the world would listen, what would you tell them?
I'm going to have to go back to our good friend Socrates with his 2-word teaching, know thyself.
Yeah. Very few people do.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's the key.
Yeah. I see now we got 30 seconds left. So thank you very much, Sal.
It's been a pleasure being here, and I look forward to sometime in the future being on the show again. And I like the work you're doing. It sounds like a really good show. And
well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Best of luck in your continued work with this.
Thank you. And we will see you again. And we will, until next week, we'll be back. So take care of each other.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
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 This has been the Universal Consciousness Show.
The Universal Consciousness Show.
Your weekly guide to a deeper understanding of the all that we are.
Well, in a few years, it will be a matter of common sense to very many people that they're one with the universe. It'll be so simple.
Live Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, exclusively on the KCOR Digital Radio Network. For more information on the show, hosts, or their guests, please visit universal-consciousness-show.com. That's universal-consciousness-show.com. Remember, there's a shift coming, a new earthly paradigm, a shift to universal consciousness.
Universal consciousness.
This is KCOR Las Vegas, home of the Digital Radio Network, broadcasting from a shack just south of Area 51.
Wait, that doesn't exist.